Hey guys, and welcome to a new Overwatch League video. We are 6 days away from the Overwatch League 2022 starting, and I haven't done a tier list. There haven't been many tier lists coming out yet. I think people are scared. I think everyone's just waiting to see everyone else's tier list before they go. And you know what I said? Heck 'em. Let's just do our tier list. I've been holding off a while just because of everything that's been going on in the APAC region, with Chengdu Hunters, Kellen going on a hike back to Korea for a little bit. I'm just trying to get a gauge for what these teams are doing. But turns out we're not going to get that time, and we're not going to get those answers. So we're just going to do it here and now, and we'll just work it out as we go. So before I start the list, I want to give some simple... I want to tell you guys how I'm basing my list off, because there are a lot of outside factors that can affect these things. I am not going to look at or make massive assumptions about the Chengdu Hunters of is a Pritter going to be benched? There's rumors that a Pritter is going to be benched and Yveltal are going to be benched all the way through June. After June, we don't know if Leave is actually going to get traded. There's rumors, and Leave has said himself that he's not going to get traded. I'm going to go with the assumption that the information that we have right now and the teams that we have right now are what they are going to be. On top of that, I'm going to be rating these teams not based on the meta as it is right now, not based on the game that it is right now. Overwatch 2 is going to evolve and change a lot as the year goes on. So I'm going to be doing a very generalized ranking of where I think the roster is, how adaptable I think they're going to be, and how consistent they're going to be throughout the entirety of the season, and not just right now. So with that said, we can just start getting into the teams. There might be some things that come up to define my list. Oh, the one last thing as well, I am not putting in scrim bucks. I've talked about how I have watched certain teams in scrims. I have all that kind of stuff. That has obviously influenced me in some way, but I'm not going to be like, I've seen this team beat this team in scrims, therefore I'm going to put this team above them on the tier list. Scrimbucks are kind of stupid. They're fun, but they are stupid, especially in Overwatch 2, which is a completely new game that is changing so fast, it's kind of ridiculous. So the teams that are winning scrims one week are not winning scrims the next week. So scrimbucks aren't really affecting my decision-making for these teams, because we've heard some teams are doing much better than we anticipated. So yeah, let's get into it. We're going to start with the NA region. We're just going to go down the list for these teams alphabetically. So we're going to start with the Atlanta Reign. So Atlanta Reign is a very solid team heading into the Overwatch League 2022. We have a very similar roster, but also an ideology change. They have lost Pelican, who was the Rookie of the Year last year, but they filled it out with a very Western team. They've promoted a lot of North American talent, primarily their backline in Ochi and Ultraviolet. I think they're a very solid team. I think... pretty confidently, I think they're going to be in the top 5 in NA. I think there's a little bit of variance there. I don't think they're going to be the best team in NA, but I think they're definitely going to be in the top tier. I think they're very strong. They have a great tank line in Gator and Hawk. They cover all their bases with that. They have a very flexible back line. They have a good DPS line. Kai, Nero, and Venom, I think, cover off all their bases. And then they have Speedily coming of age. I can't remember exactly when Speedily comes of age. It's pretty late, right? Like August? Yeah, August 26th, which... it seems like a really long time away, but it's only like halfway into the season. And I think when Speedily comes in, he's obviously going to have an impact. Very hyped up player for the league. But they have a lot of rookies, and that's what you need to keep in mind. As much as we can be excited about these teams and these guys, which have a lot of rookies, there's so much variance when you have a new player coming into the league. Historically, we've seen rookies overperform and exceed expectations thus far. And I think people are slowly changing their mindset of how they think about rookies, and that they should be lauded more than veteran players. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Atlanta Reign is going to be a very good team. There has not been much change in terms of the coaching staff. They did lose Unta. From that, so they still have Legit RC as the general manager, Sephi and Danny as the coaches. I would have liked to see them replace Unta, just so that they have 3 coaches, but hey, Atlanta's always kind of been that way, so we'll see how that affects them moving forward. I think Atlanta Reign is pretty solidly in the A tier going into this season. I can't put them below B. I think they're definitely up around this echelon. If they have a bad season, I could totally see them being middle of the pack. Things just don't come together. But I think they're pretty solidly in the A tier. I think they can definitely do well. They're competing for titles I don't think they're going to win the championship, but hey, you never know. They had a crazy run last year. They made it to the grand finals, but kind of the same way. Not gatekeepers at all. They've broken that trend, and I think they deservedly should be regarded as a team that can compete at the highest level. I think they might have more flexibility than they've had in the past as well, especially with how tanks have changed. So let's actually, I do want to throw this in here as well before I keep moving forward. I'm going to delete this F tier, and I want to make this really clear when I do this list. The league has improved so much that I actually don't think there is a hard bottom tier team. You know, last year we had London Spitfire, we had Vancouver Titans, we had Los Angeles Valiant that we knew just weren't really going to be very good, and they all lived up to that expectation. They very rarely won matches, very rarely won maps. So I think all of those teams have since upgraded, and I don't think there is an F tier. There is no LA Valiant from last year, which is just like, you're looking at your roster and you're like, what the fuck is that? Right? Like that doesn't exist in this season. So I'm actually going to delete this row. I don't think there's an F tier team. And when I'm putting teams in D tier, these teams are actually all very good. I wouldn't be surprised to see a massive normalization, and that I hope that the top end is a lot more competitive with the bottom end, you know? In the past, the bottom end has just, this team's playing this team, there's no chance they win, and it's probably not even going to be close. I think it's going to be a lot more squished together this year. At least we hope. Well, at least we hope so. We don't know what to expect. So if a team ends up in the D tier, that doesn't mean they're trash. It just means someone's going to come last. And that's the reality of this season. You know, when you have 20 teams, someone has to come 20th. So we're going to have to put teams there. So talking about teams that are in the bottom end, let's go for the Boston Uprising. I think the Boston Uprising is an interesting team. I think this team is being overrated by some people, and I think this team has the potential to struggle very hard. They have theoretically very good pieces, and I think a lot of people will just default putting them in the middle of the pack, but I think they're going to fall lower of the middle of the pack. They obviously have incredible talent that have been good in the past. We have Striker, who has obviously been a 2-time champion. We have Marvel, who had some success on the Seoul Dynasty, even though it was in a very weird role. You know, you got Faith and Valentine, which were expected to do well in Boston, didn't do that well last season. Crimzo was pretty solid in the past. I like how Punk plays, but this is an enormous roster, but none of it really speaks to me. I like Victoria. I think Victoria is probably my most excited rookie coming into this year. Itzel, I don't really understand why Itzel was signed into this roster. They already have Marvel and Punk. It screams that something wasn't going well in the preseason. Like, he got signed how long ago? A month ago? It screams that something isn't going on that we probably aren't aware of. I'm not sold on this roster. I'm a little worried that this roster is going to underperform in a season where, as I said, I think rookies are very, very good, and Boston haven't really picked up any for the most part, right? They picked up inherently players that have been good in the past, and I think those players might have tapered off a little bit. So maybe in some metas they'll be good, but I don't see this team being as solidly in the middle of the pack, mainly because the league has just improved so much. I think the middle of the pack is going to be a lot more stacked than it has. I'm a little worried that this roster isn't going to live up to that. We got Mineral as the assistant GM right now. We got Laurie, Baroy, and Askoff as the coaches. Honestly, not a lot of changes. I think the only big change coming in is Askoff. I don't know much about many of these coaches. I can't speak to it. You know, I've talked about how I don't really like how we do Coach of the Year awards, because it's very hard to see a coach's impact for these teams, but essentially their coaching staff has stayed somewhat the same, so keep that in mind. I'm going to put Boston in the C tier. I think Boston is pretty... I think that's a pretty solid place to put them. There is a world in which I could see them hit the D tier. There is a world in which I could see them hit the B tier if everything comes together. There's some variance there, but I think C is probably where I want to put them. It'll be interesting to see if they can sort of like change my mind in a way, because as I said, they do have talent on there who have been good in the past. I just can't see all of their talent living up to that hype as we've seen them in the past. C tier is too high. I think if you're putting them in D tier, like when we go down the list and we see the other teams that we're going to put in the D tier, I don't think it's fair to put Boston in there with that list. I could absolutely see Boston losing matches to those teams. We've seen it in the past, but the roster has some synergy of the past. They have Laurie as the head coach still. They have, a bunch of players who have been on this team already, Valentine, Faith, Punk, etc. So they have some pre-existing synergy and some idea of how their roster is going to work. So I think you need to give them some more credit. And that's Boston. So let's talk about the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel is not one of the teams that has changed very little, but they have made additions to sort of plug some of the holes that we saw from them last year. Obviously, they were a great team. They won the main melee. They were pretty much always there at every single playoffs, at every single tournament. They were pretty much neck and neck with the Shanghai Dragons until that Wrecking Ball composition came through and they weren't able to play that at the same level. They filled it out with Chio replacing Jexay as a main support. That's something that you should be excited about as a Dallas Fuel fan. I think there is a higher ceiling with Chio on the team. Jexay, I think he was solid. I think you knew you were going to get, but Chio looks to be a really good player. One of the better main supports being signed for this upcoming season. On top of that, we have Edison and Gurio coming in to be the hit scan players. Edison, obviously coming from the Atlanta Reign. We haven't really seen Edison play. I can't remember the last time I saw Edison play consistently, so it feels very hard to judge how good he's going to be. On top of that, Edison has historically been on a mixed roster in the Atlanta Reign, has not really had that comfort of being on an all-Korean roster like he is on the Dallas Fuel. Maybe we'll see Edison hit that peak. Like, remember when Edison came into the league? When did Edison come into the league? It was like 2019 or 2020? 2019, yeah, going into a 2020 because he got signed at the end of 2019. He was considered one of the best rookies heading into the league, and he had some good performances. But do we have as much hype around him as these other rookies? I don't think so, right? Like, I'm a little worried, and Gurio is not, Gurio is a good signing. He's fine, but he is not, he's not like your Proppers or your Kilos coming into the league where you're like, yo, this guy bangs in contenders. He hasn't had that coming from Jisoo Busan's Team Diamond. He could definitely be good, but I expect to see Edison play, and I think they're putting their eggs in the Edison hit scan basket. But for the most part, I think you'll see Doha Sparkle. If they can play Doha Sparkle, I expect them to play Doha Sparkle. We don't have a hit scan meta. One of the things that I am worried about Dallas Fuel is if you look back at the 2021 season, you're saying, well, what is the best part of the Dallas Fuel? In my opinion, it was their tank line. It was Fearless, Hanbin. Those dudes are just rock solid. They are just so good at what they do. They've been able to show that they can play pretty much everything. They have such good coordination, and that's what gives Dallas Fuel that hive mind status. In Overwatch 2, 5v5, you can only play one tank. So they're inherently being nerfed as a team because they can only play Hanbin or Fearless at any moment. So they're going to be great in the tank role, and I think they're going to be able to adapt to it really well, but that's inherently going to be a nerf for them. I think Dallas is going to be very strong. I would put them in the A+ tier if I could, but I don't think they are S tier. I don't think I can put them in the same level as Shanghai Dragons, with my question mark around Edison and Gurio as the hit scan players, and with my questions around them being nerfed with their tank line. I don't think I want to put them in S. I think they're going to be very good. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in NA, if not the best team in NA. But can I comfortably put them in S? I don't know. I just don't feel as good about it. I don't think I can just be like straight into S. They were great last year. They're going to be great. I think they're going to be very good, but I can't just put them in S. I don't, thinking of forward, obviously I'm going to give a spoiler. Shanghai Dragons is going to be S tier. Am I as comfortable with Dallas Fuel as I am with the Shanghai Dragons? No, I'm not. And I think that's why they're going to be an A tier. S tier is saved for the teams that I'm like, this team's just going to be the best. And hey, maybe Dallas Fuel prove me wrong. Maybe I'll have Sparkle tweeting at me again about D tier traces and, A tier Dallas Fuel, Omega lol. We'll see. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see Edison be crazy and Dallas Fuel to be the best, but I can't, in the right conscience, put them in the S tier. And Tasmo with the resub for 14 months. Thank you for, Tasmo agrees with me. That's what you guys just heard. General manager of Dallas Fuel agrees on the A tier. That's what you can get from that resub. Smile. All right. Let's move on to a more controversial one. Oh, I guess that was pretty controversial. Let's talk about the Houston Outlaws. This team is interesting. How do you, like, Houston is like a massive question mark for a lot of different reasons, right? I got to be careful in my throat here. I might blow it out during this tier list. So the DPS we have is Dante, Pelican, Merit, which is very good. Like, I don't think you can ever doubt how good that is. I think Dante, Pelican are both talented players. My problem with Dante and Pelican being on the same team is I think they have very similar hero pools. I think what they're good at is almost identical in a lot of ways. They're very flexible players who don't really play hit scan to the highest degree. It's fortunate for them because they have Merit. Merit is a very good hit scan player. Pretty much traded time with Kilo on, I think it was O2 Blast, right? Just confirming before I say that. Yeah, so O2 Blast. And yeah, so I think it's a really good team. I think Dante Pelican, if we end up in like a, like a Trace Sombra meta, Genji Echo meta, Genji something, like, it'll be interesting to see who plays. But I like their DPS lineup. I think it's really solid. Their tank lineup, they only have Piggy in the lineup. Piggy was very good last year. I think he had an incredible performance. One of the reasons that the Houston Outlaws were very good. And I think he's just a solid pick. Is he going to be able to play the main tanks? If we end up in a Winston meta, if we end up in a Reinhardt meta, is Piggy going to be able to hang? I think, from what we know about Overwatch 2 thus far, Doomfist feels like a better Winston, but we can't expect that to be true throughout the entirety of the season. With how good Doomfist is right now, I could absolutely see him getting nerfed going closer into the season and seeing things change. We end up in a Reinhardt rush meta. Is Piggy going to be able to hang with the best Reinhardts in the world? Maybe. It's like the main support discussion of, like, can people play Lucio? We don't know. The thing is, like, the tank rule has changed so much and we haven't seen this. Like, I like teams that have invested in flexibility in their roster of having a main tank, having an off tank, having a main support, having a flex support. You know what I mean? Jake is no longer a roster play. He's been announced as only a coach. Just to that question right there. And then we need to look at their support lineup because they have the same issue. Iris and Lastro are their support lineup. They are both flex supports players. Iris was obviously a great player in Atlanta Reign. A big reason that they made it to the grand finals on just some bonkers bat play. But the big question that we have about Iris is that he played something crazy amount of BAP. I think it was like 85% BAP play or something like that. It was like he played a lot of BAP. Can he hang on these other flex support heroes? Probably. That's not like a big question mark. But it's, we have Lastro as well. Both flex support players. We know Lucio is very good in Overwatch 2 and 5v5. Which one of them is going to pick up the Lucio? Which one of them is going to be able to play it at that degree? Can they hold themselves to the standards? Because the Outlaws aren't a team that's just trying to be good this year. Look at the players that they've signed. They signed Merit. They signed Iris, Lastro, Pelican, Piggy. They have a championship caliber roster, or they've attempted to sign a championship caliber roster, but they have some pretty weird holes in it with not having a main tank player, not having a Lucio player. For those reasons, I am detracting them from, like, a little bit from my power rankings because I don't feel like the team is super well-rounded. They have talent, but I don't know if I can trust them throughout the entirety of the season. Their coaching staff is Junkbuck, Jake, Ho Chi Lee. That's a pretty solid coaching staff. Junkbuck obviously had a lot of success on the San Francisco Shock. Jake is obviously a very smart player, and Ho Chi Lee, I don't know much about, if I'm being honest. But they're a good team. I don't think you can doubt the Houston Outlaws. This is probably going to be the best season that I think the Houston Outlaws will ever have, and I think they'll do better than last season. Do I think they'll win a tournament? I don't think so. I'm a little worried that they might fall a little short. I think they'll be competing with the best, but I don't know if they'll be the best. And, like, I'm in this line of, like, are they A- or B+? Like, with the amount of talent that they have on their roster, it feels like they have to be an A. But I don't like how rounded the roster is. And I have so many question marks around whether they're going to, like, without the main support, without the main tank, is that going to hurt them? And I'm so torn because they have so much talent. What do you think, chat? Compare them to Dallas? Yeah, like, and that's a good point, right? Like, Dallas has... It's also just... Fuck it. I'm gonna keep the Houston Outlaws misery going. I'm gonna keep that Houston Outlaws misery going. I think I'm a little worried about them with their thing. I could absolutely see them being A tier. I could absolutely see them exceeding B. They're a very high B, and I think I might change later. Honestly, I might change later once I see where the list shakes out. But I think they're going to B tier. I think we leave them there for now, and we'll reevaluate, chat. Okay, let's put a pin in it. Put a pin in the Houston Outlaws in B tier. We can change it later, and we'll see if we need to come back to this. Okay. They don't, yeah, like as Jedi said, like they don't have that well-roundedness. They don't have that flexibility. Like they have the same level of talent as both of these teams, but they don't have that. They don't have those other players. They don't have that strong bench. So I'm gonna put them in B tier. We'll come back to them though. Okay. This is going to be mad about that. Hey, you know, sometimes you got to crack some eggs to make a tier list. I don't even know what I just said. All right, London Spitfire. A team that is had a pretty awful season, you know, that we don't really know. There's no nice way to say it. They had an awful season last year. They won one match against the Boston Uprising, I think it was. It just wasn't a good season. They weren't as strong as they wanted. Obviously, it was the British Hurricanes coming in, but there's a big difference between EU contenders and coming into to the Overwatch League, and that was heavily exposed last year, you know? And it's funny because, do you guys remember last year, the fucking EU contenders stands coming in for my tier list being like, bro, you're putting London Spitfire fucking last? You're fucking off the goop. London Spitfire are gonna win the league, fucking yeah. Like, we gotta chill on that. And the thing that I'm worried about with London Spitfire is that they haven't changed the bones of this team. Well, actually, but they have, right? And that's the thing that, like, I feel like they're the same team, and maybe it's just, like, Hardy and Sparker and Shax being on the team, but they're really the only consistent factors. So, like, maybe that's not true, and maybe I shouldn't hold that against them. But they are still sticking with the idea that they're pulling from EU, and that's a worrying thing. So they are going to be in North America now, which is important. They're not going to be playing on 9 billion ping, so you need to give them that advantage. I don't think London is going to be anywhere near as bad as they were last year. Last year, it was bad, but they have Spark, who's available for the entire season, and when we did get to see Sparker play, they were good. Okay? Sparker is a great player. Backbone has been impressing me from the bits and pieces that I have seen him. Is he going to be, you know, the Rookie of the Year? Absolutely not. But he is a solid player. I like Admiral on the main sport. I think he's a solid player. Definitely a good pickup. Poco obviously has a lot of experience, but we haven't seen Poco play in a hot minute. Like, we didn't see him play at all last year due to visa issues, so I don't know what to expect from Poco. Hardy, can't sugarcoat it. Had a bad season. Like, just straight up had a bad season. People say that he has more to provide. No pun intended. People say that he has more. And I will believe it when I see it. But it's hard to defend what we saw last year. But hey, maybe on ping, maybe with a better team around him, we'll be able to see the true Hardy stand up. And then Landon, who is the new addition coming into the London Spitfire due to the provide situation. Late signing. I think he's a great player. I played with Landon in the experimental patch. Very smart flex support. He has great calls. Smart player, and he's obviously mechanically talented enough. It'll be interesting to see where he stands in the grand scheme of things. So it is definitely a better roster. I think it's an upgrade. I think they will do better, especially because they're competing from North America. But it's hard because the league is improving around them. Do I think this is going to be, you know, can I justifiably put them out of the D tier? No. Christopher is the new head coach of this team, which I think is, you know, Christopher's had a lot of experience in the past. I think he hopefully will bring a lot to this team. But it's more of a, they have to prove to me that they are going to, they have to prove to me, not just me, they need to prove to all the fans, the entire league, that they can be better than what they were last year. Until they prove that, there is no justification you can give to them to put them above D tier. And that's the sad reality. There's too many similarities. There's too many things. Just prove it. If they want to not be in D tier, they got to win some games. I don't think they'll go. I don't agree that you you think they're going to struggle to get wins. I think they'll be competitive. Like, I can absolutely see them being competitive with the C tier and all the teams that I'm planning on putting in C tier. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as F tier as they were last season, right? All right, let's keep moving on. The Los Angeles Gladiators. This is the team that I'm probably cheering for this year. I think this team has a lot of potential to be great. I really like the roster. They've kept a lot of the great pieces that they had last year. They got Space, they got Kevster, they got Shoot, they got Skewed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with their support lineup this year, because last year, obviously, Skewed was a flex support, but he was excelled at Brig. So we saw a lot of Shoe and Skewed, and they played a lot of that Brig Zen and all that, you know, a lot of these. Oh no! My stream died. I'm gonna cut it here. I promise I'm actually gonna cut here this time. Here's the cut. Let me jump back into it. All right, sorry about that. Internet died, but we're here. If you're watching on YouTube, it was the smoothest cut you've ever seen. Great transition, Scott. So we're talking about the LA Gladiators. So let's just start from the beginning. We have Shoe and Skewed being their backline. They are the consistent factors. We saw Skewed played a lot of the Brig for the Gladiators, excelled at it. But I really like their support lineup, just as a whole. We have Shoe and Skewed able to play the double flex support. Skewed can play the Brig if they need to. Funny Astro, in my opinion, historically was a great Lucio. It's one of those things. It's kind of like it's good to have that Lucio player in your back pocket, but I need to consider him like Poco in the same way. We didn't see him play in the last year. Where does Funny Astro stand within the league these days? Because he went into visa hell. We didn't get to see him play as much as we would have liked to have seen him play. So, but I like the pickup. I think their backline is very, very solid. I don't think you can be upset about that at all. I really like what they have, and I think it's well rounded for Overwatch 2. Their tank line is Space and Reiner. I think they are both great players. Space is the off tank that we all know and love. He's going to be very solid. And then they have Reiner as the main tank. Reiner has a lot of experience coming from contenders, probably one of the better NA tank contenders coming out. Can he perform at the championship level? And that needs to be the big question. When we're talking about the Gladiators now, we're not talking, is this a good team? Are they well-rounded? When you're talking about the LA Gladiators, are they a championship roster? Can Reiner play to the level to be a championship main tank player? We don't have the answer to that question. I don't know. He is a great player, but he's a rookie nonetheless. So we'll see from that. But the big question mark about the Los Angeles Gladiators is 100% their DPS line. Kevster is MVP caliber. If the LA Gladiators have a great season, I could 100% see Kevster being an MVP of the league. His flexibility plus his just like raw prowess on the DPS characters, with DPS being very prominent in Overwatch 2. Kevster needs to be that guy. He needs to be their championship player. And then we have two big question marks as their other two DPS. Arns on the hit scan, who I think a lot of us were really worried whether or not he's going to be able to hit his 2020 form. I've been watching a lot of Arns streams. Arns has been just fucking monstering people on ranked. I think Arns is back. From everything that I've seen, everything points towards Arns being back, and he is going to be one of the best hit scans in the league. Is he going to be as individually dominant as he was in 2020? That's yet to be seen, but I am not worried about him being a hit scan player. He will at least exceed middle of the pack, right? He's a monster. He looks like he's cheating when I watch him do his warm-ups. It just ain't fair. The bigger question mark that I think a lot of us have is Paddy Pan. Paddy Pan, I don't exactly know how to say his name. I should really work that out. Great contenders player. He's a Thai player. Not many players have come out of Thailand. He's just been insane. He has finally come of age to be able to be picked up by the league. The big question mark about Paddy Pan is that he went to Valorant. A year ago, he was playing in Valorant. He had a lot of success. He went with the Southeast Asian team. He popped off on that team, but he's decided to come back to the Overwatch League. But I don't think we feel as comfortable about him joining the team. He's a very flexible flex support, but he also plays hit scan. He's just one of those people who play everything, it feels like. But we don't know if he's going to be able to play at that championship caliber. Because, like, remember, he's competing with Kevster for game time. Like, I don't think Kevster should ever be taken out of this DPS lineup. So it's going to be Kevster, and then it's going to be, if we're playing, like, not a hit scan, we'll probably see Paddy Pan, and he needs to be able to play at that level. and I don't know if he's going to be able to hit that yet. It's not that I don't think he can. It's more that we just don't know. And I'm going to hold that against you. And I'm going to hold that against them when I do the power rankings. I think they're a great team. Very solid roster. It is very hodgepodge from all over the place. You know, they got two European players, 3 Korean players, 1 Thai player, 2 American players, right? Like they are all over the place, but it feels like a very Western team, and they have a lot of the bones. If you're a Dp stan, I'm sorry he's gone. If you're a Dp hater, thank you. I guess you're excited that he's gone. But nonetheless, he is being replaced by Face, who was an assistant coach for last year. He's an Australian coach. I think he's a really smart guy. Every time I've talked to him, he has good knowledge for the game. I'm excited to see him step up. And then we have Unter, who is obviously coming from the Atlanta Reign. Very outspoken person, another great smart player who's only had success every team he's touched in the league. He was part of the 2020 Valiant that had success. He was part of the 2021 Atlanta Reign that made it to the grand finals. So we also have Smash, who I don't know much about as an assistant coach, but pretty solid coaching staff overall. Do you think Space's style of aggressive off-tank will fit in with Overwatch 2 style of play? And that's the big question mark around all of you need to remember when we're looking at these tier lists, is that we don't know how Overwatch 2 is going to be played over the entire season. And when I'm making this tier list, I'm thinking over the entire season. So I think flexibility is going to be king, and that's why I like that they have Space and Reiner. Space's aggressive style seems to be a good thing for Overwatch 2 because it seems like an aggressive way the game is being played, but honestly I have no idea. We have no idea how the tank's going to shake out. Is Space good at Doomfist tank? Fuck knows. Like, yeah, we don't know. We'll see. We'll learn by seeing. But I'm not going to make like wild speculation of, yeah, when I played with Indy on the Los Angeles Valiant or Space, yeah, he was really good at playing Doom parkour, so therefore I think he might be the best Doomfist in the league, so I think the Los Angeles Gladiators are going to be like, no, like I'm not going to say that shit. I don't know. We don't know. Like Reiner, maybe he'll probably be the Doomfist player. He plays like Monkey. We don't know. So we're just speculating at this point. I think Gladiators, I'm putting Gladiators in the exact same spot as I'm putting them as Dallas Fuel. I put them in the same level. I actually, if I could put 2 teams that equate to each other, I'm putting them in the same Dallas Fuel. There is some question marks, like Dallas Fuel had question marks around the hit scan. Gladiators have some question marks around Paddy Pan, around Reiner as the main tank, and just, can they be a championship caliber team? They won the Countdown Cup in 2021. Can they keep those consistent performances? Because remember, like Gladiators' biggest weakness is like they will look really good one week, and then like 3 weeks later they'll look like a mid-tier team. So I hope we get some more consistency from this roster and that they can play to a more solid standard. There's no way Dallas and Glad's in the same tier. Dallas should be 1 tier up. Dude, that is some hard copium I'm getting from some Dallas fans in the chat right now. Guys, it's okay. You guys are really good. You don't need to just be better than everyone 100% of the time. There are some really, really, really good teams in the league. You know, I don't think I can justifiably say Dallas Fuel is going to be better than the Gladiators. I think my take is that I think the Gladiators have a higher peak than the Dallas Fuel. If they can only play 5 players at any moment, I think the Gladiators have a higher peak. I think if Kevster and Arns are popping off and they're in the right meta, they can be nuts. I think if Reiner can play at the right level or Space is able to be played, I think they are very good. I think they lose the tank matchup, but I think they're very, very good and it's close. And I think the Gladiators support line is pretty nuts. Obviously, Dallas has a good one as well, and I think that's equivalent. So I think there's like, but I think the Gladiators DPS lineup can just like edge them out. I think that the Kevster Arns duo can be the best DPS duo in the league. And that's why I'm putting them there. Like, that's why I equate these 2 teams. There are minor question marks around them, but they're championship caliber teams. Let's move on before I have to see Dallas Fuel fans getting mad at me. I could have sworn that I just saw Tasmo's sub get removed from his That's crazy. How did that happen? All right, let's talk about the Florida Mayhem. This is a Florida Mayhem dark horse team, because I think for a lot of people, if you did this tier list 2 months ago, people would have put Florida Mayhem instantly into the D tier. Everyone would have thrown them in there just on a whim and just being like, Florida's going to be bad. But I think as people have started to see more about the players, start to understand them, as they filled out their roster a little bit more, I think the people are the tides be changing. So let's talk about why. So let's start with the DPS lineup. We have Checkmate, Hydron, and Xe. Unfortunately, Mira has been dropped for Xe. Obviously, it sucks for Mira, but I think it is just overall a better lineup for the Florida Mayhem. I think Xe is a great hit scan. We saw him play in 2020. Absolutely dominant for the Paris Eternal. Unfortunately, due to injuries, wasn't able to play in 2021. If he can hit that form of 2020, he's going to be bonkers. I haven't been able to watch too much of Xe. I don't know exactly where he stands right now in terms of like where I would put him with other hit scans in the league, but we know he can hit that peak. Hydron is a great NA contenders talent, and I think is being overshadowed by a lot of other players. Like, people forget that Hydron, if you're excited about the Atlanta Reign and the rookies coming in from that team, you should also be equally excited for Hydron. He is just as good as those players. He has some great play. He's a good, like, hit scan tracer player. Very strong. He has some extra flexibility in there as well. He's a great player, and you should be excited for him. He is a really good rookie. I would put him on the same level as like Sam, and like, you know, he played with Speedily, and like he has played with all of those guys. He's nuts, and you should be excited for him. And I think Checkmate gets discredited by a lot of people just because of what happened on Florida Mayhem last year. Just because you think he's not very good at Reinhardt doesn't mean you can say he's a bad DPS player. Yeah, he didn't play under Yaki and BQB, but that's because Yaki and BQB were their go-to players. They're not going to mix that up as much. I don't know what to expect from Checkmate. People say that he's good. I'll see it when I believe it. But Hydron, Xe, Checkmate, it seems pretty solid. I think that's a solid DPS lineup. Let's talk about their tank line. Adam and someone. Adam is an Australian off tank. I think he's really solid. He's just the most cookie cutter classic off tank that you can imagine. Incredible at Diva, incredible at the Sigma. He's been around. Unfortunately, didn't get his shot at the LA Valiant in 2021. He was a part of that big old rug pull by the LA Valiant, but he is a very solid player. But someone is exciting. Like, I didn't know much about someone coming into this season. I played with him and ranked a little bit. He's confident. He has great comms, and you know who he reminds me of, actually? And this might come off as a negative, but he reminds me of OGE. When OGE first came into the league. I was on Dallas Fuel when OGE came in. He was like, he's great at communicating. He's really, like, he has that presence on a team and that confidence as a player. And I think he is someone who wants to take leadership when he's on this team. He wants to be the one calling. He wants to be the one initiating. Obviously, OG was successful, but had some, obviously, you know, asterisk next to his name. But, you know, he is talented. He was a great Roadhog 1 trick at some point. He was 1 and 2 in Korean ranked at some point when Roadhog was meta. So, you know, I think he has the mechanics. And I think you'll primarily see someone play for the Florida Mayhem over Adam, unless we end up in like a hard Diva or Sigma meta. Okay? So I think their tank line is really solid. Their back line, Sermajed, Kariv, and Anamo. Kariv was signed under the guise that like Sermajed might not be able to get a visa. Fortunately, both of them have been able to get visas in time for the league, so they are both available to play. I believe they are both in the country. I think Sermajed might have just arrived in the country. And then Anamo. I'm not the biggest fan of Anamo, but I like that they have a main sport player. Like, maybe Anamo has improved. Maybe Goomba has seen something that I don't see in Anamo. I think Anamo is a very passive main support, but if he can play Lucio to a stock standard level, it's not a big deal. And I think their backline, Sermajed, I haven't watched a lot of. EU contenders player. People from EU and people who have watched him play say he's a fucking nutter. They say he's really good and like a great mechanical player. So he could definitely be one of those rookies, kind of like a Khan in some ways, right? Like, he could be a Khan where he's just like, he comes into the league, you're like, oh yeah, everyone knows he's good, and then you're like, holy shit, this dude frags, right? Like, I'm excited to see that from them. And even if that doesn't pay off, they have Kariv in their back pocket. Kariv had a pretty bad season with the Guangzhou Charge last year, but that entire team had a bad season. I'm a Kariv simp. You guys know me. I think Kariv's mechanically insane as well. Just a well-rounded backline. And that's what I like about this Florida Mayhem roster. I don't think this roster ever fails. You know what I mean? It doesn't have enough question marks for me to be like, I'm going to put them in the D tier. There has been rumors that this team has been doing very well in scrims. Take your scrim bucks as you will. I'm not going to massively introduce that into my my equation for what they think. So they're not just going to fly up my list because people are saying they're incredible. Let me talk about the coaching staff real quick because, you know, I am also a Goomba simp. Goomba was a big part of our 2018 success that we had in LA Valiant. He's just a robot. The dude just lives and breathes Overwatch, and I think he has a great eye for the game and a great understanding for the game. I really enjoyed working with 2018. He's put together great teams in the past, and I think he's doing a great job with this roster, especially with like the Moneyball kind of roster that he's put together. Like, look at the players that he signed. Not many people are looking to sign these players in comparison to some of the other big names like the Shock have picked up. McGravy going to a coach. You know, pro player going to coach, we never really know how that's going to play out. McGravy's a very smart player, very smart guy. I could absolutely see him being great as like a player coach to help people with individual play. And I don't know much about day one, so I can't really give too much feedback on that. So I think this is a good roster. I think you should be excited about the Florida Mayhem. If you're going to believe in scrimbucks, I think people would put them in the B tier. I've said in this that I don't want to put them too high because of scrimbucks. Or do I want to put them high? They have to be above Boston. Like, I think they're better than Boston, like, by a margin, right? Which is why it feels bad. It's kind of like the Houston Outlaws dilemma of, like, I want to put them in B, but maybe they should be in C. Like, they're like, really close on this tier break. Hydron is my Dark Horse Rookie of the Year. Yo, that's crazy. They're above... B and Avril leaks. What did Avril say? What did Avril say? Anyone want some leaks? All right, let's take a quick tangent. Avril, what's the leak? Mayhem good. Damn, dude. Avril coming out here with the juice. Mayhem good. Oh, they have to go in the B tier now. They gotta go in the B tier now, dude. I'm gonna suck up that leak and those scrim bucks, and we'll put them in B tier. We'll give them a bit of love because we do know they have been good, but yeah, I think Florida Mayhem has been slept on. It's one of those teams, as I said, 2 months ago, we would have put them in D tier, but they've improved a lot. Custa bat. What? Hello? All right, Florida Mayhem goes into the B tier. They're at the back end of the B tier. I would not put Mayhem above the Houston Outlaws confidently. I can see Mayhem beating the Houston Outlaws, but I think Mayhem has a higher peak. So the list will go out. I'm actually, the way it's kind of work is that I'm going to put the teams that I'm more confident on towards the left of the tier list. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a tier list, but there's going to be some like alterations. It's more like tier breaks. You know what I mean? All right. So that's Florida Mayhem. Only A+. You guys are close. Gladiators are close. Gladiators are really close to making that like... A part of me wants to put him in S tier. I'm really cheering for the Gladiators. I would love to see the Gladiators like actually like be good this year and like fight for a championship. But the Paddy Pan Reiner stuff, there's too many question marks around that. Moving on. A team that I think is gone the opposite direction to the Florida Mayhem over the last, 2 months. I think people were excited for this roster when we first heard about it, but there's a lot of questions being raised as of late. Obviously, we have Flora Yaki. Flora is the only consistent player from the NYXL for this year. He was the one standout player of that kind of rebuild. Great hit scan player, has that tracer in his back pocket. I think a very solid DPS. Yaki, just an aggressive nut job on the DPS. I've never seen someone just have raw confidence in the way that Yaki plays the game. His tracer is nuts. His Genji is nuts. I really like the Flora Yaki DPS duo lineup. Do they cover all the bases? No, is the problem that I think, like, there are metas in which I think there could be holes with what they want to play. Like, do either of them play Sombra to the level that I would like it to be? I'm not sure. We don't even know how Sombra's going to play, but like, in certain metas, I think this combo is going to pop, but I think there are certain metas that I think it might not. And that's what I'm a little worried about. Let's talk about the tank players because this is a big question as well. Kellen is a rookie main tank, and I think a lot of people are excited. Coming from Talon, he is one of those like big rookie main tank prospects that a lot of teams were looking at. NYXL were able to get him. He's a great player, main tank player through and true. Can he play these other tanks? If we end up in a Sigma meta, is he going to be able to play it? If he end up in a Diva meta, is he going to play it? Probably. And I think he should be fine for the NYXL. I'm not worried about Kellen as a player. Vulcan, I don't know what he's doing here, right? Like, it's literally like Among Us of like, someone is sus here and I don't know why it is here. And it screams visa issues, or it screams something is wrong that we don't know. So I don't know how to take this signing. Vulcan is, he's a contenders off tank. He's good. He's fine. Like, I'm not saying he's bad. Like, he's part of Odyssey. He's been a part of like the top end NA contenders. Is he the best prospect coming out of NA contenders? Probably not. And the fact that he was signed as an NA player for a completely Korean roster, like literally look at all these Korean flags for the coaching and the managers. I feel like this was like a massive, like, we might need him to be played. Avril's calling him a 6-player cosmetic signing. Honestly, he collects a bag. He's making at least 50K, even if he never plays, and he was there just to fill in case they needed a 6th player. Who knows? We don't really understand what's happening. But I don't expect Vulcan to play. From what we know, Kellen took a flight to Korea, which everyone was like, is he getting like deported? Is he having visa issues? But I believe he is back in New York now, so should be fine. I would expect to see these 5 players play through and true. So let's talk about the backline. Gangnam Jin and Myeonbong. Gangnam Jin coming from the Florida Mayhem along with Yaki. He's always been a mechanically great flex support. He's never been in the contention for being the best flex support in the league, but he's always been solid. I don't think anyone's upset with the Gangnam Jin signing. I think Myeonbong, and I made this hot take on Boston on Plat Chat when we were talking about this team. I think Myeonbong is overhyped in a way that, like, I think Gangnam Jin is better than Myeonbong at flex support. I think Myeonbong has looked good on the Boston Uprising, which is like jumping over a very low bar over the last couple of seasons. So I think Myeonbong's fine, but what I'm worried about is, once again, we open this big old can of worms of we need main supports. Main supports are important in the league. Lucio looks to be by far the best support character and almost like a must pick with a lot of the picks, a lot of the way the game is being played right now. Which one of them is going to play Lucio? I don't know. Do either of them know how to play Lucio? Are they going to be able to be good at Lucio? I would have liked to have seen a main support signed. I'm a Vulcan Lucio. Chat, I'm going to need you to stop it. If you are listening to what Avril is saying at this point, don't. Just stop it. I'm going to put the suspicious user tag on him. Vulcan is not going to play Lucio. If Vulcan comes out on the Lucio, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to leave. That would be brutal. But hey, I don't know. There's a massive amount of question marks about them. They have good talent individually on certain heroes, like Myeonbong's Anna's really good. Gangnam Jin is good on a lot of these flex support heroes. Flora's great at hit scan. Yaki's great at Tracer Genji. Kellen's a good main tank, but it's like, is it gonna come together? I don't think so. So NYXL is going into the C tier for me. I think APAC is going to be on a different like kind of tier list. Do I think NYXL is going to be better than Boston? Yeah, I'll put them there. But I think NYXL go pretty firmly into the C tier. There's a world in which everything comes together for them and they hit the right meta, but I just don't see it coming. And I'm not going to listen. Do you guys remember last year? This is the same thing as London Spitfire last year. Do you remember last year when all the NYXL fanboys and girls came out and they were like, you're underrating NYXL. I had NYXL in C tier last year. And I'm like, guys, NYXL's not going to be good. And they're like, no, they have so many great rookies. You don't understand, Custa. Stop it. NYXL is going to be C tier. It's okay. Maybe next year. Are they NA now? They are NA now. But I don't think they're going to be that good in NA. Like, I think NA has stepped up a lot. So we'll see. I'm still going to put them above NYXL, but I think my hot take is I I don't think Boston's going to be good. That's my take. Like, I think Boston has good players, but I think I don't believe in Boston. That's what I'm going to say. So it's not as much of a tell of NYXL being above Boston, being like, oh, NYXL is way better than Boston. It's more, I think Boston is going to be worse than NYXL. Paris Eternal. Paris Eternal is an interesting one because I think Paris Eternal exceeded everyone's expectations from last year. I don't think anyone expected Paris Eternal to be pretty firmly middle of the pack. I think especially with how many issues they had, Dridro and Vestola did a great job of like stepping into the teams. We give London a bit of a pass for being not in NA. Paris did it, and they won a lot of games, and they had a lot of big match wins against some pretty solid teams, and you got to give them credit. They've pretty much kept a very similar roster from last year. The only big addition is Glista. J-Mac has become the head coach, and Mabugi is the assistant coach. I don't know how I feel about J-Mac as head coach. I don't know really. Obviously, I talk about coaches. I don't understand how people rate coaches because I have no idea how good of a coach he is, right? Get Amaze was the head coach last year, and I praised him. I gave him credit. If a team does well and people praise the head coach, you need to give credit there. I think a lot of people say J-Mac is is a great head coach, but they're literally just going off of that one Reddit thread from like 2 years ago where J-Mac wrote like a 40-page dissertation about, of like feedback. And then they're like, J-Mac must be a great coach. He wrote a 40-page dissertation. And it's like, we don't know about the quality of the feedback, about how good he really is. Is J-Mac going to be able to step up to that? This isn't discrediting him. This is more just being like, I don't really know. I think Glista is the other addition to this team. Alongside Naga. Naga was really solid. I think he has great flexibility. He seems to have great confidence as a cooler and a leader. I think Glista got the short end of the stick for the San Francisco Shock last year. Never really put in a position to succeed. He's one of the 2 DPS players on this team. He's going to have to step up. I think he's mechanically good enough. He was good on London in 2020. I think I'm happy to see that he's like found somewhere where it feels like they're putting the trust in him to be that dominant player that he needs to be. And I hope he gets to live up to that because I think he's a great player. Tank line is Dan and Vestola. Dan seems like another great flexible leader on the main tank role. Vestola was good on the off tank. I think whoever needs to play will play, and I think they'll make that work. And then Khan and Dridro. As I said, Dridro's great European main support. He impressed me last year. I didn't know much about him when he had to become an emergency signing, but he played great on everything that he needed to play. And I think Khan somehow was almost a Rookie of the Year candidate, right? Like, it was crazy. Khan kind of came out of nowhere as the DPS bloodthirsty support, and I think some people really wanted to have him in that conversation. And I think he deserves all that credit. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do if he can keep it going. So I think this Paris Eternal team is good. I don't think this is like, if you're going to talk about a team that I think is like hard middle of the pack, that's Paris Eternal. Kind of like your gatekeeper team. I'm pretty sure that's just going to be them this year. Like, I think they're going to be pretty solidly in there. I think I want to put them either high C tier or low B tier. Like, what do you think, chat? I kind of want to put them in B tier. I kind of want to put them at the end of the B tier. C? You guys really like C? No, if I'm going to call them the gatekeeper team, they need to be low B. That's how the role works. I'm going to keep them on the far right side of B. I like, they're on that cusp of like B and C. I think they're gonna be pretty solid in the middle of the pack. We'll see. They're like, you can make arguments that there might be some flexibility issues, especially with that DPS lineup, but I don't know. I just, something about me feels good. I feel warm and fuzzy when I think about the Paris Eternal. When I think about NYXL and the Boston Uprising, I feel like I have this imminent moment of despair. That moment of like, oh no, not another season. I don't feel like I have that with the Paris Eternal. I feel okay about it. So, I'm going to put them in, existential dread. That's a great way to say it, Young Brisket. So I'm going to put them in high, I'm going to put them low B. Maybe you need one more tier. Nah, we'll be fine. It'll be fine. Moving on. San Francisco Shock. And this is probably the team that no one knows where to place. Because, like, some people are like, S tier. Easy. Do you like Korean contenders? Good. Avril is like, let's put them in the S tier. No, he doesn't. He doesn't think like that. That's a lot of B's in chat. Oh my God. It's interesting. It's interesting because I feel better about the San Francisco Shock than I think other people do. So let's talk about it. Why is it so controversial? So the most important thing is, if you are a San Francisco Shock fan, first of all, your team is completely different. Yeah, you don't have the same team. The only consistent player you have is Violet. Everyone else is gone. Super is gone. I'm sorry to tell you, it's over. Okay, so now we need to talk about this roster from a completely new standpoint. Okay, let's talk about the DPS. Kilo, Proper, Sam. So Kilo and Proper are coming from O2 Blast being an absolute nutter. Proper is probably being hailed as the Rookie of the Year, and deservedly so. He is probably the best prospect, with DPS being so valuable in Overwatch 2 as we know thus far. He's like a prophet. If you want to understand like why people think of him, he plays very similar to your like Prophets, your Fletters. He just seems to play it all and dominate everything that he touches. Is he going to be as good as those players? We need to wait and see. Some people are already saying he's the best player in the league. Is like, could he be the MVP? Maybe, but let's just slow our roll a little bit. Let's just call him Rookie of the Year candidate, primary candidate, and move on from there. Kilo was the hit scan player who played for that team. Very solid hit scan player. I think he is going to be a good hit scan player. You can't be upset at that at all. Sam is a North American contenders player, kind of on the same tier as we talk about these, Atlanta Reign rookies, Hydron, all those kind of stuff. Really talented NA contenders player, expected to have a lot of impact. I don't think we'll see Sam play as much. I think they'll probably try and run Proper Kilo as much as they can. I think anywhere where they can play a hit scan or something like that, they'll play Kilo. But Sam is a necessity for this team for certain metas. And I think you'll see him play. And I don't think he's going to be a liability to that team as well. Yeah, someone said, this is not contenders anymore. These players are going to have to play against the best of the best and against the best teams. And they're going to have to prove that they can do that as a team. And then the tank role is where I think a lot of the big question marks for the San Francisco Shock start to lie. Because Super's not here anymore, as I said before. Kaluj is stepping into that role. Can Kaluj cut the mustard? And I don't think anyone has the answer to that question. No one really knows. He's a talented North American contenders player in the same basket. We know he's good. He's played on a lot of great teams. He's had a lot of success in NA contenders, but that, you got to take that with a grain of salt. I think the best person to compare him to is like a 2 years later, Gator and Hawk, right? He's an off-tank player, but he is in the same, caliber and ballpark as those guys. He's a great player. You should be excited about him. Can he win them championships? I don't know. Because I think San Francisco Shock, when you talk about them, they're always trying to win a championship. They've signed some of the most prominent rookies coming into the league. I think they're going to be good. Violet and Finn is obviously very good, but we run into the same old chestnut as we did with NYXL, as we did with Houston Outlaws. They're both flex support players. Finn is probably one of the best flex supports coming in from the rookie class for 2022. And Violet had a really bad 2021, and that needs to be stated heavily. Violet is an MVP caliber player who had a really bad season. He looked like he was spread very thin. He played Cassidy. He played main support. He played flex support. He played everything. And it felt like he struggled on everything that he actually played. He did not, even when he did play flex support, he did not play to the caliber that we hold him to. And once again, we go into the season. Is Violet going to be playing main support? Are we going to see Violet picking up the Lucio? He's a good Brig, and we know he can play a lot of the other things. Can he play the Lucio Mercy? And is he's going to play Lucio? As I said, we're holding them to a higher standard than we hold other teams. He needs to be as good as these other players. He needs to be as good as Lee J Gun. He needs to be as good as Funny Astro. He needs to be as good as all of the Vindame. He needs to be as good as all of these other, counterparts that he is expected to play against. I don't know. Maybe he's been grinding this offseason to be the greatest main support ever. But if that is true, I don't want to see if he has to step into the flex support role that he can't play to the pedigree that we want from him. It's hard. This roster is really difficult to place. Their coaching staff, Krusty Kasaurus, 9K. 9K's returned after a brief departure. They have a good coaching staff. With that, what the fuck? They have a good coaching staff. With that said, they were not coached well last year, and that's what needs to be kept in mind. Yes, Krusty won 2 championships in 2019, 2020. That does not discredit the fact that they were not coached well last year. Just from an outside looking in perspective, they were not coached well. There were too many substitutions. There were too many players put in bad spots. Glister is a prime example of that. Violet was being spread too thin. Too many things went wrong. I hope that they learned their lesson and they can build from that, but we'll see. I think it has to be A-. I don't think I can justifiably put them in the B tier. I think I have too much excitement about their rookie players. And they have too much talent. But how do I justify that against the Houston Outlaws? I would put them in a very similar boat to the Houston Outlaws. They have an unbelievable amount of talent on their team, but they are so not well-rounded and they have so many question marks around them. I don't want to add another tier either, because then I'm going to put London in E tier, and that just doesn't feel right. I'm going to put them in A-. I'm going to do what my heart tells me. I personally think they're A-. As much as I can't tell you why Houston Outlaws is in B+ and San Francisco Shock is in A-. That's where I'm going to stand. Maybe I'll move... Unless I move Houston up. What if I did that? But now I have too many people... No, I think that makes the most sense. I think that makes the most sense. I think they have to be the tier above the Florida Mayhem and the Paris Eternal. It doesn't feel right. I think it does make sense to move Houston up. No, I'm happy with this. We might stack the shit out of A tier in this tier list. I think I think I like what I've done here. My heart is, because my heart tells me I need to put the Shock in A tier, in bottom of A tier. I don't believe in them anywhere near as much as Dallas Gladiators or Atlanta, but I think I have to put them in A tier. And if I'm going to put them in A tier, I have to put the Houston Outlaws in A tier. We'll see. We'll see. We'll keep it moving, and then we'll see. Okay, Toronto Defiant. And this is a team I've been incredibly critical of this offseason. And I guess just forever. And maybe it's just because it's in my DNA to not like Toronto Defiant, because as I've said, Toronto Defiant is historically one of the worst teams to ever play in the Overwatch League team as a franchise. They have never won anything ever. Look at this. This is just awful to look at. They've been kind of bad for a very long time. But I think I need to get my mind out of the gutter for that one, because they have a good roster. They really do. There's nothing that says this roster is going to be really bad. They have Hisu, Finale, and Although on the DPS. Hisu had a really good year last year. I think he was really solid on those hit scans, on the Hanzo especially, obviously. I think he has that hit scan tracer role pretty much set down. And I think he is going to be the go-to DPS player. It's kind of one of those things of I don't think you take Hisu out, but we'll see. I'm less sold on Finale as a DPS player. I don't he played for the Boston Uprising Academy team, but I don't think he was the better DPS player. I thought Victoria was better than him. And I don't know. Every time I've watched him, it's been he's fine, but to the caliber that the rest of this team is, I'm not sure if I love it. Although I think is the interesting rookie coming into this team on the DPS. Played for the London Spitfire. He was a part of that, like, whatever that was in 2020 with the London Spitfire, where they had like 22 players and like they all played like half a stage. He since went to the O2 Blast. He had success with them. He had a pretty good season last year in Contenders, so it's awesome to see him come back. I would like to see, although Hisu play most of the time for the DPS lineup. You know, I'm not a fan of the Defiant, or the City of Toronto, or the nation of Canada, or the idea of French people thriving and cultivating their own culture in North America. But I do love Hopper. If seeing him succeed means seeing Defiant people pop off, I'm ready to hashtag rise together, or whatever their hashtag is. Who said that? Who wrote that? How can you say that you just don't like the nation of Canada in a statement? Reddit? Oh my God. That is just peak. It was great. Honestly, it probably was great. Let's be honest. That, like, Hopper. Okay, so let's move on to the tank line, because on Plat Chat, I feel like I might have gone too aggressive on this. In Plat Chat, I said I hate the tank line of the Toronto Defiant. Let me backpedal, because I backpedaled on Plat Chat. I don't hate the tank line of the Toronto Defiant. I don't. Hate is a strong word. I'm not in love with it. Let's go with that. I think Hopper Muse is an interesting tank line, because Hopper has never stayed on a team for more than 1 year. And that, first of all, is a red flag to me. Maybe it's not his fault. It's hard to know. You know, obviously teams have imploded that he's been around, but like Hopper has never been a consistent player. He's played, he always has some like interesting moments. I feel like he's a very up and down player. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes I think he is the best tank player to play the game. And the next one I see him like do the weirdest thing and I'm like, I don't understand what I'm watching right now. So he's just a very chaotic player. Maybe that'll be good going in Overwatch 2. He is the off tank going into it. But Zaire is meta. We don't know that. Zaire is not, and remember, this tier list is not going to be what is meta right now. It is going to be what is meta in the grand scheme of things, right? And over the entirety of the season. And Muse, I think, had a pretty average season. He was hyped up as one of those rookie main tanks going into the LA Gladiators, and he just never really shone to me, right? Like, think about it. Like, how do you compare Muse to, like, what were the other, like, even Mag? I liked Mag more than Muse. And Mag had some real stinker moments. Muse is fine. And that's what I don't like about the tank line of this Toronto Defiant team, is like Muse and Hopper are both fine, right? Like, they're fine. But like, compared to some of the other players that they signed, especially their backline, with the caliber of players that they signed in other roles, I feel like they kind of missed. I would have loved to have seen them get like some of the other tanks, like Kellen or something like that, rather than these two players that I think were like have big question marks about how good they're gonna be. Hopper about to carry, dude. I don't know where all these Hopper simps came out of from, and maybe I'm just not. Maybe I haven't seen what you guys have seen, but I'm just not sold on the Hopper stocks. So we'll see. I could be easily wrong about that, but let's talk about the support lineup, because this is the thing that I think everyone can collectively agree, fucking it bangs. Chorong and Twilight is just, I just want to watch Twilight, Toronto Defiant, just to watch these two players play. Twilight is finally getting off of like living in Violet's shadow. He's going to be able to be that primary flex support player who is like, he's just so good. When he played on the Vancouver Titans on the Zenyatta, he was the best. His Ana makes me just weep with joy. And he's just so good at everything that he does. Just a very solid, consistent player. And then Chorong is the best main support, I think a lot of people would agree, coming out of Contenders. If you've watched him play, he's just so good. He plays the Lucio, he plays the Brig, he plays literally everything you would want him to play. They're going to be the best part of this team, and you should be excited for these guys. So as a whole, I feel like I'm too harsh on them, you know? And that's, as I said, I feel like it's residual judgment from the last few years of watching Toronto Defiant play the game. Their coaching staff is, I guess, a question mark for me. KDG, Yang, Moby Dick. KDG has obviously had a lot of success on different teams, right? So he was a part of the Philadelphia Fusion team when they had that crazy 2020 run. He did a great job with that team. They were consistent. They were strong. The most recent year that he did with the Toronto Defiant, it wasn't great, but like he also had Beast and Logic's. He was like, congratulations, you're head coach. By the way, here's these two guys. And he's like, okay, this is taking up your salary space. Like, it's going to be hard. So it feels like he's finally been able to build the roster that he wants to have. And maybe this will be him being able to step up. So I actually have risen up on my Toronto Defiance donks. I don't think I want to put them in the A- tier because I don't love their DPS lineup. As I said, I'm not sold on their tank line. But I think I'm going to put them... How much do we love the Florida Mayhem right now? How much do I believe in Avril's leak that Florida Mayhem is good? I'm going to put them above Florida Mayhem. I'm putting them above Florida Mayhem because I feel like I've already exceeded Florida Mayhem's expectations of like they're already jumping through the hoops. I really like Toronto Defiant. I think I would actually put Toronto Defiant and Florida Mayhem in like very similar places. They're both very good. I don't think either of them can be put into the A tier just yet. I'm not a Scrimbucks believer. Scrimbucks have never done us well. Someone told me the last time that we went to the Scrimbucks exchange and we came out satisfied. It's like a casino. You just don't win. The house always wins. It never pays off. Houston 2021? Yeah. Houston 2021. Do you guys remember all those stages that Houston won in 2021? Oh yeah, that was great. I feel like everyone's like, oh, Houston beat San Francisco Shock in one match, and they're like, oh, that was a successful season. Good job, guys. Like, they didn't make Hawaii once, right? And they made the playoffs. Did they even make... Did they make Hawaii? They didn't even make Hawaii. Wait, what do you mean they had a successful 2021 season? Who said that they had a successful 2021 Houston Outlaws? Who said that? Because that just straight up ain't true. They did not have a good season. They were expected to get bottom 5. No one expected Houston to get bottom 5. People who said they were going to get bottom 5 were just like Houston Outlaws haters. Better than every other season. Congratulations. They didn't come last. Good job, Houston Outlaws. Talking about last. Vancouver Titans. Oh, God. That was a rude one. So let's talk about them because... They have rebuilt their roster, and they are way better than what they were last season. Vancouver Titans last year, I was very critical of them last year because I feel like they just signed a bunch of players who were like, no one else wanted because they were like players they were fine in the league and then they were like pretty much retired and then Vancouver Titans just like signed them, like FRD, like Linksa, right? And I'm like, fire, you know, like look at this roster, like, you just looked at this roster and there was no star potential about it, unfortunately. A lot of the players were past their peak. And it felt like that was like, it just wasn't good. And that's why they were thinking. So when I say that this team is much better, I want you to believe that. There is actually a lot of potential in this roster and I like the people that they've picked up. So as much as I might not be over the moon with this roster, it is definitely a step up from where they were last year. And I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to pop off. We got Aspire, Shockwave, and Psycho on the DPS lineup. Spire obviously had a great season with the Toronto Defiant coming in as that emergency substitute. Just honestly impressed me, impressed everyone in the league, especially on that Tracer, on the hit scan. He was just really, really good. Shockwave had an incredible 2020 season with the Vancouver Titans when he was there. But in 2021, I think also had visa issues and just didn't really play. So we don't really know where to rank him compared to everyone else, but we do know that he has been very, very good. Then we can talk about Psycho. I don't know a lot about Psycho. European Contenders is my big blind spot. I don't really know much about Psycho. He played on Falcons Esports, the best EU Contenders team. He's obviously a good player, but I don't know where to put him in the rest of the league. You know who else we thought was going to be good last year? The London Spitfire from the British Hurricanes. So maybe I'm just burnt by that and I just don't believe in it as much, but has good. He's going to be the flex DPS player. They have a very well-rounded roster. Spire, Shockwave can both play the Tracer, hit scans. They can be very flexible. Psycho can play these flex DPS heroes. I think it's very well-rounded. I really like how it best EU DPS contender last year. And that's it. Like he has a lot of hype coming out of EU contenders, right? Like, and same with Sky Ripper, right? But the question becomes, how good are they really, right? Like, we don't really know where they stand in Overwatch League standards, especially because the league keeps improving, right? This Vancouver Titans roster is much better, but the league, like, look at how top-heavy NA is right now. So it's like, it's very hard to be like, this team is good, but then also, like, put them high, right? Their tank line is only false, and I'm a little worried about this. False is a good NA prospect. You know, someone said earlier when we were talking about Kaluge, they prefer False over Kaluge, and I think that's not a bad shout, right? Like, False is a great off tank. He's had success in NA contenders. He's been good, right? He was a part of the American Tornado roster. He's had those moments. He is as I said, in the same bag as, you know, these new Atlanta Reign players, all those kind of guys. He's from the same, like, graduating class. Feels like NA contenders people have all finally come of age, and they're like, yes, it is our turn to shine. And he's one of those players. But as the only tank, it's the same thing that I said about, who was the off tank player that we talked about earlier? Piggy. The only off tank player on their team, is he going to be able to play the Reinhardt? If Winston let's say Winston gets buffed and ends up becoming better than Doomfist, is he going to be able to play Winston at the same level as these other Winston players in the league? It becomes way harder. So I don't like that they don't have that. I've generally been not liking that across all teams. The support lineup, I actually really like the support lineup. Aztec, we didn't get to see too much of last year. When he did play, he was fine. And I'm excited to see, like, him actually maybe get more of a starting position. Masa, I think, is criminally underrated by a lot of people. I was kind of surprised when he didn't get re-signed with the Atlanta Reign, but I guess it makes sense with the OG UV signing for Atlanta Reign. But Masa plays everything. He's solid at everything. His Lucio is really good. I got no concerns with him playing Lucio coming into this team. And Sky Ripper is obviously the British Hurricanes. He essentially replaced, when the British Hurricanes became the London Spitfire, he essentially stepped into that role, and he is the flex support. I thought he was a flex support. I don't know why it says Mercy here. I don't know, maybe he's a great Mercy player as well, but as far as I'm aware, he's a flex support, and he should be coming in. He'll be either trading time with Aztec. I don't know who's going to start over Aztec and Sky Ripper. We'll have to wait and see. Played Mercy for Clockwork Vendetta. He was a Mercy one trick. He was a Mercy one trick who started on Clockwork Vendetta, and then he eventually made it to British Hurricane as a flex support. Dude, some people got some wild history. They only have two coaches in Flubby and Pew. These guys have been the coaches ever since this Vancouver Titans team exploded as the Korean roster and then moved in. So they obviously haven't had a lot of success, but I think they have the best roster they've ever had. This is the best Vancouver Titans roster they've ever had since the explosion of the original Vancouver Titans roster from 2019 and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited for them. With that said, I think I have to put them in D tier. I think they're above London. Someone has to be last. I think these guys are going to be fighting for that spot. I think C tier and D tier are going to be competitive, but I can't see the Vancouver Titans beating these B tier teams. I'm a little worried. Sorry, Shockwave. I'm sorry. I hope you guys prove me wrong. And like, I'm going to say that about London as well and all those players. I know it's disheartening when you see these lists go up and stuff like that, but you know, I said it to those guys last year. Just, you guys got to prove us wrong. Like, it's hard to put these teams higher when there's no substantial evidence to put them any higher than they are right now. So I hope they prove us wrong, and I hope they pop up, but we'll see. Still no breadsticks. But Shockwave, best alpha surgeon. Dude, Shockwave put me in the ground on the alpha. Dude, yeah, I'm fucking an F tier these days. But so yeah, that was brutal. It'd be awesome to see Sojin get played. And I think Sojin would actually change some of these lists here and there. But as I said, they got to prove it. Talking about teams that got to prove that they don't suck. Washington Justice. I have been burnt so hard by this roster. My disappointment from last year was immeasurable. it was really bad because like this is one of those teams that theoretically have good individual players, right? And the performances that they put up last year, other than the May Melee was really good, and a bit of the June Joust. They were actually really good. But as soon as they were forced off of these Winston metas, it just didn't feel like they were able to hang. And their flexibility whenever they played the Wrecking Ball was quite poor. It didn't feel like their coaching was good. It felt like they were all over the place. We had the Decay getting subbed out. We'll see. I like the direction that they've gone with their roster this year. They kept Decay, Mag, Assassin. I think those are three of their best players from last year. Assassin and Mag obviously had the yips and just had some really poor performances from most times. But it's, I like that they're staying on the roster. Decay is obviously a phenomenal player. I think he should never be subbed out. As much as he is sometimes not believing in himself, they need to convince him that he is the best player on this roster because he is. So let's talk about their new signings. Okay, so we got Happy joining Assassin on the DPS lineup. Happy had a great season for the Houston Outlaws. He's just always been a solid player. I don't think you can ever say Happy was bad. I expect him to be solid. I think he's a step up from Jerry. I think Jerry had like the same problem with Myeonbong, where when I talk about Myeonbong, it's like Jerry was really good on the Boston Uprising. It's like, well, jumping over a low bar. And I feel like he got heavily exposed last year when he was on the Washington Justice going up against some of the best players in the league. And I think Happy is not going to have that same issue. Krillin is coming in at the support. He is a player who was part of the 2020 London Spitfire that we talked about before. He is a good flex support. He went over to T1. Apparently people are really excited about him. I didn't see much of him play. I didn't watch a lot of T1. But people say that he is one of the better flex supports coming into the league. Other than some of the like hard rookies, like Finn and stuff like that, he's probably down there, right? I think he's a good pickup, and he should be good. I think I'm more excited about him than I was Bebe last year, if that makes sense. I think there's more potential for Krillin to be sick. Opener is replacing Closer. Just all memes aside of they had to get Opener because, they got rid of Closer, I don't really like the signing. I don't know what to expect from Opener. He if you don't know who he is, same. He was a part of the Genji roster when Genji had their worst season ever in 2021 at the beginning of that team. They finished 10th. He wasn't great. He then went to Australian Contenders. I don't know what it is with, people going to Australian Contenders and then getting signed, like Korean players going to Australian Contenders and getting signed, but he went to Australian Contenders, came third. He wasn't exceptional from what I saw when he played. So it's a very weird signing. This, to me, is like he popped off in trials. That's what it screams to me. But there were much better rookie options that I feel like Washington Justice, with how good their roster is, I feel like they should have been able to at least have a bid for. Like Chorong, like could they have got him over Toronto Defiant? It's hard to know. It's hard to really know why Opener's here, but hey, hopefully he proves me wrong. Kalios is coming in as a tank player. I like him. I think he was really good when he went to the NYXL. He was on the NYXL for like the 4 months when that team was like exploding. And they were really struggling. He came in. He looked to be a more solid and consistent off tank for that team. I think he's good to, if we end up in an off tank meta, Sig, Diva, that kind of stuff. I think he's just rounding out the roster. I would expect Mag to play most of the time though. And then Vigilante will be coming of age very early on. He's in July 1st, so that's like. It's like 2 months into the league, so he's not going to be available the whole time. But he's essentially just the flex support from Talon. He's a really good player. Avril likes to speak very highly of Vigilante. He should be good. It'll be interesting to see who's going to play once Vigilante comes of age, or Krillin or Vigilante. It'll probably be Vigilante in my opinion, but maybe Krillin will be popping off by that time. We'll see. But it's a solid roster all round. I think it's a good roster. Am I as high on this Washington Justice roster as I was last year after everything that I know, especially considering that their coaching staff essentially stayed the same? Like they have Ty Dollar now, but they have like Supreme as head coach and Chilhua after such a bad season? No. And for that reason, Washington Justice is going into B tier. I'm actually going to put them around the same place as Paris Eternal. Like I'm going to put Paris Eternal below them, but they're pretty firmly behind Washington Justice. I don't know. They're not going into C tier. I don't think they're that bad. Like, if that team is that bad, if Washington Justice goes through this season and they end up in C tier, a lot of people need to get fired. And like, that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. With the amount of money and resources and talent that they have on this roster, if they finish in the bottom half of the season, that is completely unacceptable in my eyes. Completely unacceptable. They have Decay, who is an MVP caliber player. They have incredible rookies. They've signed Happy. They have good players. Like, there is no way they should ever end up in the C tier with how much quality that they have in this roster. So we'll see. We'll see as time goes on. But yeah, that's where I'm going to put the Washington Justice. Okay, so that's NA. That's where we stand in NA. I'm pretty happy with this list. I think it's pretty fair. NA is definitely top heavy. I don't think there is a team that is head and shoulders above anyone else, and that's why there is no one in this S tier. I don't think I can be confident. Like, I can't confidently say Dallas Fuel is the best team in NA. I cannot confidently say Gladiators is the best team in NA. I think these two are probably my most highly touted, and I'm excited the most for these two, but I can't put them in S tier. I think that this middle tier is going to be kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of wiggle room here, and I really hope that we get to see the Vancouver Titans and London Spitfire actually like prove that they are, because they have a lot of rookies and they have a lot of players from like regions that a lot of other players weren't looking for. So I hope that they get to like really step up and pop off this year. But as I said it last year, the league is just getting better, and I think that any of these teams would finish like 16th last year, easily. So let's talk about the APAC region. So we're going to start with the Chengdu Hunters. And the important thing to realize when I am talking about the Chengdu Hunters, I am talking about them as if we are going to see this roster. Because we don't know what is happening exactly with the roster. It has been confirmed by Leave himself that he will be staying with the Chengdu Hunters. So we can be happy about that. But there has been rumors that like Aprita and some of the other players might not play and they'll be permanently benched. I'm not going to speak to that. I'm going to assume that Aprita is going to be playing in the league. So I really like this roster. I think this roster is the best roster that the Chengdu Hunters ever put out. One of the things that I'm most excited about is that Aprita, he's the only addition. In reality, this is the exact same Chengdu Hunters roster, but he's the only change as Aprita. And if they just chill and play normal with Aprita, now that they have a more consistent DPS other than Jinmu, so that they don't have to play silly heroes like Pharah and stuff like that, they have the option for Jinmu to play the Genji, to play the Pharah. But if they just need to play Leave Aprita, that is a very, very strong DPS lineup. And Aprita is, if you guys don't know who he is coming from Team Chaser, the team that won, that no longer exists, that won Chinese Contenders. He was probably the pop-off player on that roster. He is absolutely incredible. He has a very flexible hero pool as well. He plays the hit scan. This should free up Leave to play a lot of almost everything, and I'm pretty sure we'll just see Leave Aprita play all the time. And if they can work out what's going on with their support lineup, like, yes, you have 4 support players. Yes, they're all very good. Doesn't mean you need to play all of them. Just pick 2 of them and play with it for a consistent amount of time. And if you need to sub one out, that's fine. Don't do it between maps though. Or just like change it from match to match to match to match. Just play Monk Nisha. Just play Faraway Yveltal. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care. Just play 2 of them. And I hope that they don't like big brain themselves. I don't know anything about the coaches. I feel like I think they just lost one of their coaches. Yeah, they just lost Rui. He was an honorary advisor. I don't even know what that means. I don't understand how their coaching works at all. But there's been some weird shit going on for the Chengdu Hunters, so I don't know. I can't speak to that. And their tank lineup is just Gaga. I'm sad they lost Elsa and Late Young. Both of those players heavily impressed me in 2021. I didn't like either of them going into 2021, but they impressed me. And I would have liked to have seen one of them be here, just in case. I really like Gaga as a tank. I think he's very flexible. I think he has great mechanics. But I would like to see them have an off-tank player, just in case we end up in like a hard diva meta or something like that, right? But we'll see how that goes. And that's the whole roster. So that's the Chengdu Hunters. I really like this roster. I think it's very well-rounded. They don't mess up their supports as long as they don't feel like they need to play silly heroes and play Pharah everywhere. So, like, I don't want them to have the same issue that they had last year where they get to the playoffs. Oh, yeah, we're here in the playoffs. And then they were like, well, we don't want to play Pharah anymore. And then they just sucked. I think they finally have enough talent that they can play straight up and they will beat most of the APAC region. So I think Chengdu is in the A tier. I don't know exactly where to put them in comparison to NA. It's really hard to put them. I'm very happy with them in A tier. They're definitely not S tier, but they're definitely not B tier. They could definitely fall to B tier if all this roster stuff ends up being true. If a Predator doesn't play, they end up getting stuck. Above Shock. Yeah, I like that. I actually might I'm going to put them here. I'm going to put them above Atlanta as well. As I said, I'm completely going on the idea that this is the roster that we're going to have. I actually think this is a really good roster. I think they have the running MVP and leave. I think they have a consistent roster. They have synergy from last season. As I said, a Predator is the only new player coming in. They don't need to reinvent the wheel. They don't need to work out all this kind of stuff. I think they'll be good. I think they can go above Atlanta. I believe in them more than Atlanta. We always underestimate Atlanta. Oh, I think Atlanta's going to be fucking sick. But Chengdu Hunters, remember, like, people forget, Chengdu Hunters went to, what, 3 of the 4 tournaments? Final tournaments, right? They did May Melee, Summer Showdown, Countdown Cup. They missed June Joust to MYXL. Like, they were good the entirety of the season. They were the second best team in the APAC region the entire season. And nothing about what their roster has right now, except for their organization exploding, should change that. Atlanta too, yeah, but that's why, like, I would say, as I said, like, it doesn't matter. If I put them here or here, Atlanta's going to be sick anyway, right? And you say Atlanta too, but Atlanta also lost Pelican, who was the rookie of the year, who was a big part of their success. Same with Iris, right? Atlanta has a lot more question marks with their rookies. But they're good rookies, right? Guangzhou Charge. Guangzhou is an interesting team. A part of me really likes their team. They've got rid of Kaylee, they got rid of Jihan, they got rid of Kariv, they got rid of Mandu. And I think these were a lot of the biggest problems from last season. As much as I love Kariv, he did not have a good season. Mandu was just, I don't know what happened with Mandu, but he struggled in the league. Kaylee, another player, I don't know if it was communication issues, just struggled. And this whole team just suffered because of it. They've taken out all of those bad parts and they've actually picked up a lot of good parts. And I think a lot of people are overlooking that part of this roster. And I think people are heavily underrating the pieces of this team. So we had their DPS lineup is Eileen, Choice of One, and Develop. Develop, I don't really know where to place because he was one of the best rookies coming out of Korean contenders, but he got snatched up by the Shanghai Dragons and then just never played because they have Flutter and Lip. Why would you ever play Develop? But does that mean Develop isn't going to be sick? Like, I don't know. There is the thing of Choi is sick and will be playing not from the facility with them, which could hurt him. But I also think Eileen is heavily slept on. I feel like people don't respect Eileen where I feel like he really deserves respect. If you look at the leaderboards and the rankings of how Eileen is, there is no reason people should be discrediting him so hard. He is flexible, he's solid, and I don't think he's ever been the problem at the Guangzhou Charge. I think that this DPS lineup is heavily underrated. And I think that they're getting overshadowed by, some of these other teams. Is it better than like Chengdu Hunters or Shanghai Dragons? No. But I think there is a world in which, I was going to say they're better than Hongzhou's DPS lineup, but I just don't think that's true. But I like them more than like the other DPS lineups that I think do I like it more than Valiant? Okay, well, let me keep talking then. Well, I don't know. Guangzhou, I'm just like lost in the sauce on. A part of me thinks they're going to be good, but then I'm like, well, they're not better than all these other teams. So it's like, well, how do you really rate them? So let's talk about their tank line. Rio and Krong. Krong had a great 2020, but went missing in 2021. Like, people were saying that Krong could have been Rookie of the Year in 2020, but in 2021, I guess he's just, one of those people who had the shared suffering of the entire Guangzhou Charge team. Rio he's always been solid, but we live in a world now where solid doesn't get you anywhere. if you want to be a good main tank in the league, you need to be dominant. And I feel like Rio is never... I can't remember the last time I watched Rio play and I was like, yeah, this guy fucks. Like, this guy is getting it done. And I that's what I worry about with Rio. But I like Rio and Kronk, they have all the bases covered. Is it going to stand out? I don't know. Probably not. But it's just not good enough. The support line, Unique and Molly, I think is really good. Molly is another player, just like Develop, who got signed to the Shanghai Dragons, collected a ring, and then left. Never got play over Izayaki, and it's just because it's hard to integrate a Chinese player when you have someone just as talented as Izayaki. Molly was sick in 2020. When Molly did play for Hangzhou, I'm right about Hangzhou, right? No, Chengdu, sorry. When he played for Chengdu in 2020, he was sick. Like, Jonak was even tweeting in 2020. Like, dude, Molly is nuts. His Ana was crazy. I remember watching it be played, and he was so good on the Ana. Like, I'm excited to see Molly get main playtime again, because it sucks when you see these talented players just go and ride the bench because they signed to a top team. So I'm hoping that we get to see Molly pop off again. Unique is a good prospect for from Korean contenders, coming from T1, coming from that roster. T1 wasn't the best team, but Unique was solid. He plays it all. He's the Lucio, the Mercy, the Brig. They have both support players. I think he's solid. And I think that's maybe what makes Guangzhou so hard to place. Their entire team is solid. It is good. I don't think this team is going to shit the bed like they have in previous years. Like, I think they're actually going to be really good. But there are so many better teams. Like, I think it's disrespectful to put them in C tier. Like, if I put them high C tier, I think Guangzhou can be better than Washington and Paris. Like, I think they could be mid B. But, like, I don't know. Like, it feels weird putting them there. Like, I definitely think Guangzhou is better than Boston and New York. Is it they? What do they do with their coaching staff? They, like, dismantled it in the middle of the season last year, so I don't really have a good run on it. Youngjin's moved to coach. NY isn't shit. Well, I don't think New York's going to be good. I am much more confident in charge than I am in New York. I also think Guangzhou's going to be better than Paris. You know what? Fuck it. I'm putting Guangzhou middle of B tier. I'm going to do it. That's where my heart believes they should be. It's bold. I guess this is my hot take. This is my hot take of the tier list, I think, is that I think Guangzhou is going to be good. And the thing is, like, and the crazy thing I think about it is that usually when I'm, like, high on something, it's because I either know something, or I like one of the players, or I really like something about the team. But I literally have no personal connection to Guangzhou at all. I've never played with any of the players. I don't have any reason why I should think Guangzhou are going to be good. I just think they are going to be good. Nothing about their roster says that they're going to be worse than the Washington Justice. I can totally see Washington Justice being better than Guangzhou, but I can totally see Washington Justice shitting the bed. And I can't see this Guangzhou team being that bad. I'm going to stick with it. Fuck it. You know what? YOLO. YOLO. I'm happy with it. There we go. Who do they beat consistently in APAC? But APAC is stacked. And that's the thing. Just because let's say they come like 6th in APAC, doesn't mean they're not better than Washington, Paris, or New York, or Boston, right? Like, you can't, like, yes, remember, this isn't a tier list where I'm ranking each team in their region. I'm ranking them based on how I like their roster against other people. And I think I like Guangzhou's roster than all of these other teams. All right. Hangzhou. Let's do it. This team could be the best team in the league. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this team could be the best team in the league. This team could also be the worst team in the league. I don't understand what their management does, what their coaching staff does. I don't know how to feel about it at all. But I have no confidence in their coaching staff. They've signed Chengdu, who is they signed the Seoul Dynasty head coach. I think the Seoul Dynasty coaching has been one of the biggest reasons that team struggled so much. I feel like it's always been very poorly coached. Then their other two coaches are player coaches. Players who used to be players who are coached. So neither of them really have a ton of experience in coaching. So they have one coach who I don't think has ever been able to take a high-level roster to the level that it needs to be. They have Miro and Neko, two people who used to be players. So I'm a little worried that this coaching might be weird, they don't know how to do it. But they have so much talent. Their players, individually, their players are insane. So let's talk about their DPS. Architect and Shy, Pineapple, Alpha Yi. Guys, I know I used to be an Architect simp just like you guys. I don't think Architect should ever play. I love you, Architect. It's great. But it's over. It's not even against Architect. Maybe he could have his season. But when you have Alpha Yi, Pineapple, Shy on your roster, he should not get playtime. These people are insane. If you haven't seen Pineapple play, this guy pounds on hit scan. He's so good on hit scan. He played really well for Billy hit scan. He's absolutely nuts. He is it's actually sad that Pineapple is playing on a team with Shy because I think Shy should play, but Pineapple's also kind of banging. So we might see things, but Alpha Yi, the partner of Pineapple as well, is also crazy good. If you've seen this dude play Echo, this dude is nuts. He is so good at these flex DPS heroes. He has a really good tracer. He's a monster, and you should keep that in mind. So Shy, Alpha Yi, with Pineapple on the side, I think you can start being can these guys hold a candle to a Pretty Leaf? Can they hold a candle to Lip Fletter? And the question is, they're close. I think they could be close. Yes, there's some rookies in there. Yes, they need to be able to prove that they can do it consistently, but I can see it. I can believe that those players can be just as good. Oh, shoot. How do I open up the tab that I just had? No! Let's go Hongzhou. Spark. Remember, we've got to Google LA Valiant after this. So, tanks. Control Shift tab. Yeah, okay. I'll just do it this way. Otherwise, I'm going to break everything I know. So, we got Gushui, Liga, and Bernard. Bernard actually was pretty solid for me, but I want to see Liga play. I was so hyped about Liga in 2021, and he just never played. I think it was touted that he had mental health issues and was unable to play. But he's still on this roster. He's on a two-way. I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know what's happening there. But Bernard was fine. And then they have Gushui, who I'm a little worried about Gushui that he is still living off of the hype of 2019 and that he still doesn't have it. He might be riding that wave a little bit too long, and I'm a little worried that he's not a thing. I saw some stinker gameplay from Gushui last year. Do you guys remember when we watched Hongzhou Spark play Brawl last year? Dude, I wanted to slam my desk against something. It was like they had never played Overwatch. I thought I was watching a plat game of Brawl. It really was so bad. So we will see, and that goes back to the coaching staff of this team. They have talent. I don't know who's going to play, though. And then their support lineup is Super Rich and Irony. These are both great players, individual players being picked up. Super Rich from TCC, he's probably the best main support coming out of China. He's just does it all, everything that you'd want in a main support player. And then Irony coming from Billy Gaming alongside with Alpha Yi and Pineapple. And that team was really good. They took Team Chaser all the way. And there's a lot of talent in these players. So I'm excited to see these guys coming together. As you said, we have a lot of synergy from that Billy Gaming roster. So it'll be interesting. So they have the talent. And that's why I say, there is potential that if everything comes together and all of their players play to their potential and they play the right players and they get the right meta, they could be the best team in the world. I could absolutely see them winning a stage. Do I believe in them to do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm a little worried about how this team is going to be run. So I think Spark is definitely in B tier. I think I want to put them in high B tier. I think they're better than Guangzhou, and I think they're better than Toronto and Florida. But until I can see that this roster is going to be properly run, I can't put them in A tier. Like I've been saying that, like, we've been saying that Spark is going to be good for like 3 years now, and they've just yet to live up to the hype. Put them next to Houston. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. They have... We literally said they were going to be last year? No, we thought they were going to be good in 2019. I don't know, chat. I'm going to keep them there. I'm going to keep them there. Just because I have no faith. They have so much talent, but I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about them. I think I want to leave them there. All right, let's go. Oops. Let's do LA Valiant. Remember, I got to not close the thing. Let's go to LA Valiant. So this, have they announced their team? Because there was a leak on Reddit today from the Overwatch League website that had this roster, but they're missing someone here, right? Who are they missing from this list? What was his name? God, what was his name? He's a Sombra one-trick, Haker. So there is this player called Haker, who I have no idea who they are, but apparently they're this Chinese Sombra one-trick player who in 2019, under No Hill on LGE Huya, he just played Sombra in contenders and won it, and then just retired, and that's what he did. So essentially, this LA Valiant team is essentially No Hills and his nepotism, which I don't hate because he's been successful. So he's hiring people that he has been successful with in the past. So a lot of these players are from teams that he has coached in the past. So let's talk about like No Hill. So we have No Hill and Huya. So these are like No Hill has in the past coached Team C. He essentially made Team CC what they were. He is a person who led this team to be the first in a lot of these rosters. He has signed Huya to be his assistant coach, who was a player for Team CC just recently. And then they signed a lot of Team CC players. We have Dia, we have Innovation, and we have Ezhan. Sashin, I don't think, he hasn't played. We'll talk about him later. And then we also have Haker from all the way back in LGE Huya. So their DPS lineup, Dia, Innovation, Becky. The problem with the LA Valiant is there are so many question marks on this team. Like, more than anything else. Dia didn't play in 2021. So he's obviously great. He was part of the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons. He went back to contenders. He had a lot of success. He has been a great player. He was a two-way for the Shanghai Dragons. Innovation played for Team CC. He's a very solid player. I don't think he's like a proper high level player, but he's very solid. He's a hit scan player. He's good. You can't go wrong with him. Becky coming from Team Diamond. Team CC, he got listed as support on the Overwatch League website. I don't think there's any merit to that. He should be playing like the flex DPS for this team. And he's solid, right? And then we have Ezhan, who is also a Team CC player as of recently. He's like that hit scan tracer kind of player. Very similar, I would say, hero pool to Innovation, if I'm being honest. So we have Ezhan, Innovation, coming in, like, as Innovation and Ezhan were the primary DPS duo for Team CC last year. Dia didn't play last year, as I said. So it's a good DPS lineup. And I think the DPS lineup is I think you should expect those three players, the Innovation, Ezhan, to be the primary core of who they're going to play. And it's a good roster. But where we start massively hitting some question marks is when we talk about their other roles. So Sashin is the only tank player for the Hangzhou Spark. And if you're like, Sashin, I could have sworn I've heard that name. It's because he played for the Hangzhou Spark. He never played. He was like a Zarya one trick who was also used to be a DPS player. And he played for the Spark, but he very rarely played. He recently had a tweet that he made it to 4600 on DPS, tank, and support, which is impressive, on Korean ladder, which is impressive. Don't get me wrong. But that doesn't give me any confidence of him being the only tank player to be able to live up to that expectation. Like, yeah, he's mechanically gifted as a player, but is that going to work? I have no idea. I literally have no idea how successful this is going to be, and I'm a little worried that it's one of those gambles that isn't going to pay off. But we'll see. And then talking about the support lineups, they have Coldest, who played for the Hangzhou Spark as well. Didn't really get to see him play much for the Hangzhou Spark. I love his picture. I just think it's so funny. But he played for Hangzhou Spark, didn't really get to play much. MCD was the primary flex support for the Hangzhou Spark until MCD got dropped. Coldest stepped in, and he was fine. Like, Coldest was fine. I don't have like crazy high expectations for Coldest, but I think he's a fine player for the team. And then we have Lengsa. He came from Team Chaser, the team that was very successful in Chinese contenders. He was originally part of Chengdu Hunters in 2020. During that season, I don't really remember much about Lengsa at all. He's a main support. He's a pretty solid player. He plays a little bit of flex here and there. I'm excited to see him play. But the backline's kind of, it's okay. Like, it's solid. It's not like blowing your socks off, but it's solid. And I think if you want to believe in LA Valiant, you kind of just have to believe in No Hill, right? Like that is really the realistic thing. If you want to believe in the LA Valiant, you have to believe in No Hill and his ability to coach this team to a respectable roster. The APAC region is so stacked. The season is so good. And because there's so many question marks, I'm going to put them in C. I'm going to put them above NYXL. But it's definitely, I'll see it when I believe it kind of thing. I think there is a lot of talent in this roster. You guys are putting question marks. Like, you guys, like, how do you guys, like, white hot take? Dude, what are you, like, No Hill as coach, along with the Team CC coaching staff with a pretty solid backline, is absolutely C tier. Maybe I could put them under NYXL, but I don't think NYXL is going to be good. And I don't think they have a main support. So I'm going to put them in C tier. I trust, in No Hill, I believe that I have the confidence. Dia, Innovation, Ezhan is a really good DPS lineup. I think their backline is really solid. Like, as much as it's not sexy and it doesn't make me wow my socks off, it's good. And if Sashin can just, I don't know. Sashin is the big negative, the big minus for them. I don't know who wants to put them in D tier. If you want to put them in D tier, it's like you didn't even watch like Korean contenders or like Chinese contenders, or you just don't have any respect for any of those players. Like, their DPS lineup is sick. Be careful not to overdose on the copium. Like, yeah, like, you guys are acting like I just put them in like B tier, like mid B tier. I put them in C tier. But Kel over Sashin? Yeah, Kellen over Sashin. But, like, I just hate the NYXL flexibility. I think that they're in a lot of problems. I put them in high C tier. I'm happy with them in high C tier. Yeah, I absolutely believe it. I think there's a world in which they hit B tier pretty easily. If they, like, if Sashin ends up being a good tank and, like, the players play to their potential, I can absolutely see LA Valiant being good. Like, I don't think this is a scorching hot take. I don't think this is a hot take at all. They are still the worst team in the league. Okay, so okay. Let me just defend this thing. So let me get this right. All right. So a team that has Dia, Innovation. Let's just say Innovation and Ezhan. Team CC, a team that like was very, very good. That have, look at all these accolades in Asian contenders. Look at all these accolades in Asian contenders. Dia, we all know, is a very talented player. That's a really good DPS lineup. That is at least a B, maybe A tier DPS lineup with that setup. They also have Becky in case that doesn't work. They have Coldest and Lengsa. Lengsa was one Chinese contenders last year on main support. A very competitive region. Like, you cannot be super excited about the Chengdu Hunters and then also hate the LA Valiant. That doesn't make sense. The only big question mark, in my opinion, is Sashin. And for you saying like Dia hasn't played in a while, they don't need Dia to play. They already know that they can play with Innovation and Ezhan. And on top of all of that, they have a good coach. No Hill is a very accredited coach. Just look at his resume. Look at all the resumes of the coaches and the players that I just showed you. How are you saying that this team is going to be the worst team in the league? That doesn't even make sense. Yaki and Flora is better than the Valiant DPS. What that screams to me is that you have only watched the league and you have not watched contenders, and you are not respecting the contenders players that are coming into the league. Like, you're just saying, I watched these guys be good in the Overwatch League, and they haven't been good in contenders, right? Like, let's move on. Philadelphia Fusion. Philadelphia Fusion is a really interesting team. Honestly, Philadelphia Fusion is another classic example of, if you guys think Valiant should be F tier, if you think Valiant should be the worst team in the league, why is Philadelphia Fusion supposed to be good? Like, they have the same thing. If anything, they have worse players in a lot of ways. If you look at their roster. But I'm really excited about the Philadelphia Fusion. I think this roster is going to be really good. The biggest thing to take from it is they've essentially, T1 has promoted a lot of their contenders' talent. T1, if you haven't watched them as a team, they were really solid. They finished third, but they were a good team. They essentially took all the best pieces out of that team and put them into the Philadelphia Fusion. So we have MN3 and Zest, which, if you ask Avril, is like absolutely nuts. MN3 as a hit scan is really, really good. You should be keeping an eye on this guy. Potential Rookie of the Year candidate. Some people are naming him as Rookie of the Year candidate. If we end up in a hit scan meta, I can see them being good. Zest, I think, is a great, I think he's a great support character, like supporting staff DPS player, right? He's going to be that flex DPS player. He's going to be playing that Echo. He's going to be playing that Genji for this team. Should be expecting thing. This should allow Carpe to play like the Tracer, sort of really fill his own role. I think Carpe's struggled over the last couple of seasons because he's been spread so thin. Like, he feels like he had to be the hit scan player and the Tracer player, and then like every other player or everything they're seeing, and there's been so much weight on him. I'm hoping with MN3 Zest coming in that they can take the weight off. Part of me kind of hopes that they just play MN3 and Zest. We'll see. I'm sure like those three DPS players will be cool to see. But yeah, we'll see how they really use this roster. Carpe's the captain. Carpe is the legacy player for this team. We'll see. Their tank line is Fury and Belosaria. Oh, sorry. Belosaria, if you aren't aware, another T1 player, part of that team. He's a solid main tank player, very good. Essentially what you would expect from a high-end contenders from the APAC region player. Really solid. I don't think he's going to knock your socks off. I don't think he has as much excitement as Kellen. I would rather go Kellen, but he's solid. And I think Fury is going to play a lot of the time, unless we're in like a Reinhardt or a Winston meta. So we'll see. We don't really know how Overwatch 2 and tanks is going to work out, but hey, they have the roster. Like they have the main tank, they have the off tank. I like that they've rounded out their roster. The support lineup is where I really start getting question marks. Aim God coming in. I'm not sold on Aim God. You know, we've seen him so much. He was part of the Boston Uprising. Mechanically, he's a very gifted player. He was on that Team CC roster that I said was good. It was Team CC's worst performance. Aim God is good, though. We'll see how he performs. He's not Alarm. Like, you know, like Alarm was one of the best to ever touch the game in the flex support role. It's definitely going to be a downgrade for them. And I think Fixer's a solid player. I don't think he is as touted as, you know, Chorong. He was a part of the Boston Academy team that did well in NA. He's solid. I think he's a solid main support, but it definitely, my biggest question marks for Philadelphia Fusion end up in the main support role. The team's good. I don't think it's going to be top of APAC. I think I want to put them really close to Spark. Like, I think I want to put them below Spark. I don't think I want to put them in A tier. I think I need these rookies and this T1 essentially contenders roster to prove to me that they can be better than what they are. But I think they go pretty firmly next to the Hangzhou Spark, below Hangzhou Spark. I could see them being way better, but I could also see them say worse. I think there's a lot of variability here. They're definitely, I would put them above Guangzhou for sure, but below Spark. I think Spark, like Spark, as I said, Spark is a very volatile team. I could see Spark absolutely poo in the bed. But I think Philly is going to be good here. Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about their coaching, but their coaching's pretty solid. Like, I like them where they are. Overrating APAC. Oh man, I love me some NA bias. All right, let's talk about Seoul Dynasty. All right, so what do we got here? We got Fitz, Prophet, the classic DPS duo. This is the TPS players who should always play. The probably one of the best DPS duos in the league. Some people would say the best DPS duo in the league. They have always been. They have just struggled to get a good roster around them. This might be the first time they might have that roster around them. Unfortunately, obviously, Jonak did have to retire due to personal issues. We never really found out exactly what that was. They have Stalker coming in as the DPS player. Stalker's kind of like a tracer player, from what I know. But he plays a lot of flexibility. I don't expect Stalker to play much. You're playing with Profits. I expect Stalker to be really come in only if like the meta kind of is super weird. I think it's a great player to have to sort of fill out the roster. But we'll see. Tank lineup is only Smurf, and I'm a little worried about having only Smurf as their tank lineup. Smurf obviously an incredible Winston. We saw bits of Wrecking Ball, obviously solid Rissa, but we haven't seen a lot of other looks from Smurf other than the Winston. We know he's a great player. He's a championship caliber player. He's done that. But as the only tank player in this top roster, I do have a little fear that maybe he can't cut some mustard on everything. But we don't know. It's one of those things of like Overwatch 2, we don't know. I would love for Seoul Dynasty to have an off tank as well, just so I could sleep better at night. But maybe Smurf's sick. He has a ring. I have faith that he can just. I think a lot of people do as well, but there is that fear. All right. Let's look at their supports. So losing Jonak, their support lineup is Creative and Vindame. Creative is solid. I think Creative, the narrative has been shifted towards that Creative was underrated, and now everyone is saying Creative is being underrated, that I think he's probably being properly rated. He's good. I don't think he's one of the best flex supports in the league, but I think you're more than happy to have him on your roster. I think they would have loved to have Jonak have that MVP level player, but I think Creative is probably going to be fine. Vindame is a really cool signing as well. I think a lot of people aren't, under Churong, I think Vindame is right there on the main support level. He plays it all. I think their support lineup is solid. So the thing that I'm excited about is that I feel like their roster is solid around Profits. I think it's better than, your Gestures, better than your Tobys. I'm really excited, but I don't think this roster doesn't have that punch that I was hoping it had. If it had Jonak, then if this team had Jonak and then had like Fury in it, I'd be over the moon, right? Like if Jonak didn't retire and then they had a player of player caliber like Fury, I'd be all in on this roster, and I would say that they'd be high A tier. But there are some holes with only Smurf as the only tank, their support line not having that kind of punch. I'm actually going to put them low A. I think low A is where I really want to put them. I think they're going to compete with these guys. Like I think they're competing with the Shocks, the Houston Outlaws. Maybe I'll put them here. I think I'll put them here. Like they're very around those Houston Outlaws, San Francisco Shock. I think Seoul Dynasty is being massively overrated right now. I think people are being like Profits finally has a great team around them, but I think it's being overhyped how good their team. I think low to mid A is pretty good, and I think that these are the teams that they're going to be fighting with for wins. So I'm happy with that. I like that there. I think APAC. I think it's funny every time I do my tier list. When you talk about NA, people are generally in pretty agreement. I feel like people's expectations or understanding of the APAC region is incredibly like misguided, and I'm not gonna act like I know everything about APAC or these players, but like there are some wild takes. Like some people think like Seoul Dynasty should be S tier, and some people think Seoul Dynasty should be like B tier. Like it's kind of crazy how it works. All right, Shanghai Dragons. And you guys know what's going to happen here. Shanghai Dragons, the championship roster that we saw last year, absolutely dominant. There is no reason to believe that this team is going to be bad. They have Bebe to come in as their second flex support to replace Molly. Who Are You is still sitting on the bench for that. Like, maybe Who Are You is going to play. If Genji stays really good in Overwatch 2, Who Are You might play. And it would be awesome to see Who Are You play because he got a ring for free last year. But this team's incredible. They fled a lip. Still the most versatile and best DPS duo in the league. My guess for MVP, my bid right now for MVP of the 2022 season is Lip. I think Lip is going to win it. I think he was very close to Leave last year. And I voted for Leave, but I think you could have easily voted for Lip and I wouldn't have been upset about it. I think Lip is solid. Fled is obviously incredible. It's funny because I think Fled has taken more of a supporting role this year. Their tank line, Fate and Void, I think it'll be interesting to see how much Shanghai Dragons lose if they lose the cooling of Fate, if they need to play Void. But I think Void will play that DPS Sigma play, but I think Fate will play a lot of those other heroes. It'll be interesting to see if we end up in a Doomfist meta who's going to play Fate or Void. Part of me thinks that Void might play, but we'll see. Time will tell. But you can never go wrong with Void or Fate. So it's like the Dallas Fuel problem if you have a luxury of riches. Sport lineup: Lee Jae-gon, Izzyaki, Bebe. Bebe won't really play. I expect to see Izzyaki and Lee Jae-gon play through and true. They are well-rounded. They have everything that they need in their arsenal. There's honestly not much to talk about. This team is just absolutely stacked. Let's talk about their coaching staff real quick. They got Moon as head coach. Like, look at... You know what's funny? Is like I think a lot of people don't realize about the Shanghai Dragons as well. It is not just the talent that they have on their roster. We look at these other rosters and we look at how many coaches they have, how many managers they have, how many things. Look at how many players, look at their management. They have general manager, like everyone else's is this list, but they also list the owners and everyone else. They have a general manager, a team manager, a head coach, 3 assistant coaches, a competitive manager, a player manager, senior operations specialist, and then a special correspondent. They have double the staff of most teams. Plus, their facility is supposed to be absolutely incredible. They have more money and more management and more resources than every other team in the league. And it's not close. You compare that to what some of these other teams, especially in NA, have. Like, there is a reason why Shanghai Dragons is the best. Is because they excel at absolutely everything. They don't just excel in buying the best players. They excel in having the best in absolutely everything. Shock or Dallas? Not even close. Like, why? Dallas is probably the closest, I would say. And then maybe Shock. But, like, even then, I think Shanghai blows them out of the water. XL don't even have enough players. They literally signed a player for 50k so that they have 6 players on their roster. Definitely not MYXL. So that, like, Shanghai Dragons straight into S tier. There's no reason to not have them in S tier. I think they are head and shoulders the clear favorite going into this season. And that's my tier list. I want to reiterate that there is so much that is going to change this season. We are going into a completely new game. There is going to be a lot of changes. I am expecting new heroes to be released throughout the season. I am expecting aggressive balance changes. I'm expecting a lot of things to change. That is going to put a lot of weight onto these teams, and that is why flexibility is going to be key, and that is why I put a lot of weight onto flexibility being key. That's why I have MYXL in the C tier. Oh my god, MYXL, they have Yaki Flora, they're so good. They have 5 players, essentially, with 1 player who is like an imposter right now, it feels like. They don't have the flexibility, and I think teams that don't have that flexibility are going to heavily struggle. With a Lucio meta being very valid, there is so much chaotic things that could happen. I want to enforce here as well. I hope you guys enjoy my tier list. Please take everything with a grain of salt. Tier lists are not supposed to be so that you can yell at someone or get mad at someone or act like someone hates somebody. These are just for fun. You should be excited. The season starts in 6 days. It's over. The 6-month winter is over. It's going to be so much fun. Who the frick cares who I put where in my tier list? Let's let the teams decide. Let's let the players decide. And let's enjoy the season because we finally got Overwatch 2. We finally got something to look forward to. And we finally get to, enjoy, some new content and get to see the best players in the world get their hands on it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to comment me what you think. If you think I'm stupid, If you think I'm the genius, if you think anything, make sure to like the video. Turn on notifications as well. I'm going to be doing a lot of VOD reviews once the season kicks off as well. So I love you all. I hope you guys have an amazing night, and I will see you guys next time. Mwah. Oh yeah, did you just knock down everything off my desk?